latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and I want to talk to our next guest, James Fitzgerald, obviously about the Brown University mass shooting, but also the terrible news of the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, stabbed to death, it's reported. And I don't know how much there is to say about this, though it did seem a little confused late last night when LAPD showed up at the scene, and where there were already reports by People magazine citing, basically unnamed but reliable sources, that Reiner's son, Nick, 32 years old, had murdered his mother and father. The LAPD wouldn't even characterize him as a person of interest late last night. I haven't seen anything change with respect to that. This is what we got from the deputy police chief, Alan Hamilton, last night on the matter. Do we have Alan Hamilton? Oh, here we go.
Told that a family, we're being told
hold on. One at a time, please.
Told that a family member is being interviewed in connection to these deaths. Can you confirm that? And is that family member being cooperative?
There are going to be many family members interviewed. I'm not going to confirm whether someone's being interviewed at this time or not. We're going to try and speak to every family member that we can to get to the facts of this investigation.
Chief, why are you not looking for a suspect?
I'm sorry.
Chief, why are you not exactly looking for a suspect? Are you confident you know who did this?
We have not identified a suspect at this time.
Well, then shouldn't you be looking for one so these neighbors aren't worried about their own lives and their own safety?
Yeah, so at this time, after we determine, I need everyone to understand something. In order to comply with the legal process, before we do anything here, we have to get a search warrant because there are issues regarding standing at this residence. So as long as those legal requirements are met, we can continue the investigation. Now, when I tell you that we have not identified a suspect, it doesn't mean that we're not working the case. We will not identify a suspect until that person is identified as a suspect, and we're legally seeking them if there is a crime to be reported and if that person is a suspect in that crime. Hold on. Did that answer your question, sir?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Has anyone been detained yet for questioning? Are you questioning people now that could be possible suspects and or a person or persons of interest? Specifically
to your first question, no one has been detained. Specifically to your second question, no one is being interviewed as a suspect.
Why would no one be interviewed? Wouldn't if you had if Nick lived in the home and you had you have him, you found him, you know where he is, would he not be? You just stay here. We need to talk to you before anything happens. I know you're waiting for a search warrant, and I understand there are complications unless there are exigent circumstances, giving chase and so forth with the private residence if you want to do a comprehensive search of the property and gather evidence. So, okay, but it's just strange. And I wonder in high-profile cases like this, I was wondering if this is something where local law enforcement, even ostensibly sophisticated law enforcement department like LAPD, would enlist FBI for assistance, particularly if you have a flight risk or somebody who has given flight. And I don't know the whereabouts of the person that may not be a suspect in the minds of the LAPD, at least of late last night, but is being reported as the responsible party for the two murders. How else to say it? The other thing, too, it's interesting because I know there's a lot of emphasis on Nick Reiner's long history with drug addiction, periods of homelessness. But it is worth noting that Rob Reiner, Rob Reiner, forget his politics for a second. I mean, celebrated, great director. Somebody mentioned on text Spinal Tap, When Harry Met Sally, Few Good Men, Misery, Princess Bride. I mean, talented guy. And he was fun, the character he played on All in the Family, too, just opposite Carol O'Connor. I mean, it's a great show. His dad, Carl Reiner, like Mel Brooks, probably wouldn't have a career today, which is a sad commentary, but it's a commentary for another day. Rob Reiner and his son Nick collaborated on a movie a decade ago. Being Charlie was the name of the film. It wasn't very good, but nonetheless, it was loosely based on Nick's struggles with addiction. And, they did interviews together, and whatever the strains in their relationship were over the years, they seemed to have been in a good place a decade ago when they were doing publicity for the film.
Were you ever hesitant to show your father some of those things you had written? Because there's, as much as you're pulling from other people's experiences, you're pulling from your own as well. Was there ever a moment when you thought, this is too much, I don't want him to know all this?
Well, he knew a lot about what I'd went through already, so I wasn't any concerned at all about what was in there about me. But the father character initially was harsh on him, and I, believe it or not, was not wanting the character to be that villainous. And it was hard for him for a while to think that I thought of him that way, and to convince him that that's not how I felt, but that fathers do get in that mode sometimes when they're trying to help their kid who's in danger.
And it's interesting that he mentions that, because I did think that. I mean, the father originally was written as very black and white, bad guy, and I thought, oh God, that's what Nick thinks of me, and oh my God, I thought that was, but then he actually came about halfway through the process. He said, the father should be it should be a little bit more dimensional. I mean, he's like too much of one thing. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, I took that as to be, he's feeling better about me now. So he was able to say that. But the character evolved, and I do think that over the course of making the film, that our relationship definitely changed and it wasn't that was terrible or anything, but it got better because I then understood a lot more of what he had gone through, and I think he understood a little bit more what I had gone through, and then the script reflected that.
Well, who knows what transpired for the next decade or where the relationship was as of present, but just sort of interesting, that project that they collaborated on. James Fitzgerald is a retired FBI special agent and criminal profiler from the Unabomber case. Now the co-host of the Cold Red podcast that's on Spotify, Apple, all the podcast platforms. Jim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. I wasn't sure what coast we were going to start on between the East Coast or the West Coast. We're going over to Australia for our topics today, but I'm open to discuss all of them or any of them and follow through on some of what you just said.
Well, does the FBI have a role in the Reiner double murder?
Not a direct one. No, it's a homicide, a state crime out of California. But they will certainly provide assistance if there's any interstate aspect to it, and certainly lend. We just simply call it police officer, cooperation or local police cooperation. And if they need, but LAPD is not going to get any computers or crime scene people to help out. So this will pretty much be an LAPD and maybe the sheriff's office. I'm not sure the exact jurisdiction there, but it's going to be them, probably the robbery homicide unit working this case. And if the FBI plays any role, it'll be tangential.
And tangential would be, like I said, would an example of that be if a suspect flees and you need help tracking him down, and LAPD needs help tracking him down?
Sure, or even interviews of people in other states. I mean, the LAPD detectives can fly there, but with agents right on the ground, with everywhere in the country, within 50 miles, they would maybe do the first interviews in that regard. But ultimately, the prosecution would be out of LA County, and it would not be federal. At least as far as I know, there's no federal nexus at this point, and I can't imagine how that would develop from what we know so far.
Let's move over to the mass shooting at Brown University that claimed the lives of 2 people, 9 others injured, 1 still in critical condition, we understand. Oscar Perez is the police chief of Providence, Rhode Island, and he explained how we went over the weekend from having a person of interest in custody to having a person of interest released. Take a listen.
So did the FBI director specifically say tweet that it was a tip from Providence Police that led you all to Hampton Inn. Can you confirm if that's true, and what exactly was the evidence that led you to this person of interest?
Yeah, so it was there was a tip that came in, just like we would take in any other tips, and that one came in specifically identifying a person of interest, which was this individual. And so our detectives got on it, just like they got on others, but in this specific one, it was actually picked up by the FBI, and they followed through with it, and they ended up coming and locating this individual of interest, and at that point, we did a thorough investigation, examined, ended up drafting some search warrants, came up with some evidence, but that evidence was examined, and we didn't have enough, obviously, to be able to prosecute anybody, and so that person was released.
It's interesting the way he said that. We had evidence, but we didn't have enough to hold him. Do you read that to mean that he still is a person of interest?
Yeah, I've heard some debates online last night. I watched both these press conferences in a row. It's almost like they were coordinated. One ended, the other one started shortly thereafter. Very odd pressers on both coasts. They detained a person, someone called in a tip, it sounds like, and of course they would have been remiss as investigators if they didn't try to search this guy out and figure out just who he is. Apparently it was the FBI, perhaps through phone data analysis of some sort, that they could triangulate where this guy was. Apparently they had a name and, look for the tag recognition, license plate recognition, all that type of stuff. Found him in a hotel and kept him in custody for 36 hours. In fact, I didn't say custody. They kept correcting themselves. The mayor, the chief of police, and the DA. He was detained. That is a legal term. It's not arrest. It's short of arrest. It's short of custody. They may have technically had to tell him, well, you can leave if you want, but it wouldn't really benefit you to do that right now. And we'll see how that all plays out. His name never went out to the public, as far as I know.
No, it did.
That works in the benefit. It did? The name's out there?
The name's out there, yeah. Mm-hmm. And where he lived in Wisconsin. From a suburb of Wisconsin, and there were a number of outlets that reported his name. Mm-hmm. And his military service and other aspects of his resume, if you will.
You're right, and I did read he traveled from Wisconsin, but at least as of last night, I didn't see a name. But whatever. Yeah. If the PD didn't put it out, that gives them some coverage in that regard, legally down the line. But if there's enough probable cause or even reasonable suspicion to detain someone for a violent felony, in this case, 2 homicides at least, let's hope no one else dies. The law does permit, the Constitution does permit keeping people detained for a limited period of time, and they just couldn't build the case against this guy. So I'm not on the inside, of course. No one, listening right now, as far as I know, is. So we'll have to see how it plays out, whether they're going to let him go, keep a surveillance on him, and just see where that whole case comes together at that point.
Are you surprised, given all the cameras, the campus police, the response to Providence PD, that this guy was able to slip away?
Yeah, I heard one of the reporters last night said you can't go anywhere without getting a traffic ticket, for running a yellow light, speeding, whatever. But here, there's no cameras in this, major Ivy League university, and that is very surprising to me. Nowadays, their tuition is so high. I'm sure their endowment approaches $1 billion, if not more, and they couldn't afford, I'll even say $100,000 to upgrade their security system. That's sad. I also wonder, 5 years ago, and maybe since then, defund the police off of campus. Did some of that play into account? How many officers are on the campus PD? How many on the Providence PD that could have responded when they did? And that's a whole other issue that should be addressed too. So it's not just cameras and surveillance type equipment, but also personnel allocation, and have they been cut short over the years? Have the guns been taken off of the campus police, has happened around many universities in the U.S., certainly after 2020, and sort of emasculate them and just make their job more difficult to do? These are all questions that will have to be answered at some point.
Yeah, there's some questions that they sort of diligently avoided answering, sort of like LAPD not answering who called 911, who found the bodies. And I'm talking about, with Reiner, of course. But now with respect to Brown, this is a different thing. A mass shooting like this, and particularly if the suspect if no suspect is brought into custody anytime soon, is this where somebody like a Jim Fitzgerald comes in to help do profiling on this, help pour through the evidence and start to put together a profile and a theory of the crime?
Yeah, I have a feeling our behavioral analysis unit is involved right now, probably on the scene. I remember going to Yale University in the early 2000s when a female student, she's a German national, finishing up her senior year, was murdered on the streets of New Haven in a nice area, and I was on the ground for that within a few days. So I'm sure behavioral folks are there. And the one thing I haven't heard mentioned about the Brown case is a concept very important to us behavioralists, us profilers, and that is victimology. And Dan, I want to make it clear to you and your audience, I'm not locking into this theory, but certainly something the police have to look at is, who was killed, who was shot. Did those people have any particular sort of history with anybody in the recent past? A boyfriend that broke up with them, a job, they fired someone, their parents did something. So we really have to learn everything. In fact, one of the names identified is Elsa Cook. I just read today she happens to be the vice president of the Brown University Republican Club.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure that's not a very popular club, out of all places, Brown University. I don't want to bring politics into this. It's way too early. I think the other side would probably do that by now, but I'm not going to do it. But that's something that has to be looked at. I'm not sure she was the first person shot or the second, and of course others were injured, some seriously. So I'd have to look at, just like with the D.C. sniper case. I remember telling people after the first 6 shootings in Montgomery County in the fall of 2001, I said this could be they're targeting one person and they take out 5 or 6 others as collateral damage. It turns out I was in the right church, just the wrong pew. John Muhammad was trying to kill his ex-wife, and she was next on the victim list after he killed the bus driver up in Montgomery County, Maryland. So we have to look at whoever was shot here and go through all their personal backgrounds and see if there's anyone out there that would want to kill them and just kill a bunch of other people to sort of hide in plain sight and use that collateral damage to cover themselves. I hate that term, by the way. And I want to emphasize again, I'm not locked into this theory. People kill for power, control, for profit, greed, revenge, retaliation, ideology. Is this a former faculty member who was fired or who didn't get tenure? Is this a student who flunked out or was never admitted? So these factors have to be brought into and looked into and see what perhaps is the motivation behind this guy.
Well,
if we reach out and write a manifesto or put something on social media, we'll find out.
Yeah, and also, if he was targeting a particular student or students, a student group, a professor, like you say, but also even just perhaps taking it one step back and the building that he chose to go into on campus. Maybe there's something with respect to that department or a class, like you say, maybe he flunked physics or something like that. I don't know. Is that part of the calculus?
Well, of course, victimology, usually it's individual people that we look at their complete background to find out why they were targeted. But it certainly can be an entity like the school itself. It could be the building itself. What happened in that building? And what happened in the last 5 days, 5 weeks, or 5 years, maybe in that building or at Brown? Disgruntled employees, someone else arrested on campus, their kid arrested on campus. We had a Midwest bomber I worked back in the early 2000s. His sons were arrested in Utah and Illinois, and he put some pipe bombs out because his sons were arrested. The guy's still in jail and looking through some kind of an appeal. So people kill for all different kinds of reasons that make no sense to people like me and you and your audience. But they're grievance collectors. That's a term that psychologists and threat assessors will come up with. What grievance has this guy been living under for the last, again, 5 minutes, 5 weeks, or 5 years or longer, that somehow on Saturday afternoon this person had to take out his frustration on these, I will say, innocent students, and they are all innocent, of course, but was one of them actually the target with the rest? And I hate the term collateral damage. The military uses it, but it's used in law enforcement too, to cover his tracks get away with it, and go from there? These are all questions that the investigators have to be considering, along with everything else we mentioned here, frustrated faculty members, student, something happened in that building, whatever.
James Fitzgerald, retired FBI special agent, criminal profiler from the Unabomber case, now co-host of the Cold Red podcast on Spotify, Apple, and all the platforms. Jim, thanks as always for your insights. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dan. Take care.
Take care. And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line. And it is that time, 9 o'clock, AM 560, WIND, Chicago.
A mass shooter is still on the loose. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. The one who opened fire at Brown University Saturday because it turns out they took the wrong guy into custody early yesterday. A person of interest let go late last night.